So if I'm giving any advice, and everyone take deep breaths and do what feels right to you, but it is going outside of the four walls of what your profession is, or picking something up to show how much you care about the industry you want to be in, even if you're not being paid for it in that moment, even if no one is asking you to do it. That's the way to stand out and have people really see how much you care, because that's, as say, a manager and a leader, I want people here who care about what we're doing.
Welcome to this week's As Unexpected podcast, when we talk to C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists about how they lead into the future when the future generally goes as unexpected. I'm Scott Marshall, your host, and my own professional experience has made me a believer that it's not how you show up when all goes as planned, but it is how you show up when things go as unplanned. Given all of their experiences, each of our guests has become very attuned to the fact that the future is not to be predicted. My hope is that this podcast can help all of you become better leaders by building the core leadership capabilities for leading in an uncertain world. Hey, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of As Unexpected. I'm your host, Scott Marshall, and today I have Matt Matzkin with us. Matt comes to us from Los Angeles, California, where he has built such a cool career. I think he's got the job so many people listening would love to have, but maybe he's going to give you a different side of that. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Scott, great to see you. Good to be here today.
Hey, Matt, would you mind starting off, as we usually do, by providing our listeners a bit of background on your career journey and some perspective into your current role?
Yeah, you got it. Love it. So I am from Southern California. I'm of Southern California. I grew up outside of Los Angeles, have always been drawn to, in love with the entertainment industry. However, when I first went to college, the thinking is that I was going to go into medicine and become a doctor. And it was the entry level chemistry in my first year where I got a C minus, and I said, this is not going to happen. I shifted gears to become a communication major, had a great time, UC San Diego, and then started to slowly make my way towards a career in the entertainment industry. It was in the fall of 95 when I went on semester at sea, and we'll weave that in and out. But as I was finishing my undergrad experience, I realized I have no skills other than I can read and I can write, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And a big keynote for the job that I'm in right now, I am not a creative. I can be creative in my deal making, but I have no artistic talent. I have no musical talent. I've tried writing in the past, and it was not of professional grade. So I said, law school, right? Law school is law for anyone who can read. Give my little plug for law school. For anyone who can read and write, isn't sure what else to do. Like, law school is the great place to go and get a degree. And I knew it would actually transform my thinking into a different way, and I could go get a career. The areas of law that interested me most were the soft IP, copyright protection, idea theft, what goes in the entertainment industry. Initially for legally, it's like, what goes on screen, what can you say, First Amendment type law. Came up to back to LA, went to USC for law school, had a tremendous experience there, and found my way into a law firm. And it was my first kind of real professional job, and it was great professional training, and I was doing exactly the type of work I wanted. We were representing major Hollywood studios. We were representing the biggest musicians in the world. I was a litigator, and I really, really hated it. Because anyway, love the people I worked with. It's a great firm. Being a junior lawyer was about the judicial process, which for many people is a wonderful career. For me, I wanted to be part of a product. I wanted to be directly advising my clients with how they can manufacture something. And it goes back to, what can you put on the screen? What can you say? As a young lawyer, I was how long can this brief be, and what day does it need to be filed, and how many days until the next thing, and can they do this at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and what do I have to do by 2 p.m. on a Thursday? And it wasn't, I wasn't there. Fortunately, from a connection I made at the very beginning of the law firm, I was able to get into a small television production company that was a subsidiary of the Hearst Corporation. They were doing movies for television and low budget, unscripted programming, home makeover. This was early 2000s, but home design makeover shows. These shows for the History Channel called the Modern Marvels, which was great because it was everything from like the pyramids to naval warships, air conditioning, the neon light bulb. It was the coolest. I love that series. I don't know if History Channel is still running it. It was really fun work to be doing, but I also felt in that moment it was a little small for where I wanted to be. The company was also pivoting its strategic direction, and I wanted to be somewhere bigger. And I faxed a resume to the gentleman who was running the legal department in Warner Brothers Television at the time. The key thing that he was looking for was someone who actually was in house doing production work. And I happened to be fortunate enough to be doing that. I say it was only 6 months that I'd been doing it. However, it was on my resume as something that I'd been doing. Came into Warner Brothers Television in 2004 as a junior
Can I just
lawyer.
clarify something, Matt? You faxed unsolicited a resume to
Uh,
someone. Is
and I
that is
and
that is that the
yes,
story?
yes, and I intentionally will say it. My boss at the time came into my office and she said, "They're looking for a junior lawyer at Warner Brothers Television. Here's the name of the person and here's his fax number." I still have the fact. It was a cover sheet that basically I typed up, you know, to whom it may concern, I hear you have an opening. Please call me. Sent the fax in. Unbelievable. I one of my proudest moments ever.
Of
About
course.
the phone call came about 3 months later of when we received your fax, we actually didn't have an opening, but we have one now. Uh, uh, when people ask for the guidance on how to get a job, and I'm like, well, you can blindly fax your resume somewhere, it doesn't land present day,
Yeah.
but worked for me, right?
Yeah.
As unexpected, you never know where the path is going
For
to go.
sure.
um, Came here to Warner Brothers Television. This is early 2000s and a booming primetime television industry where shows like Friends and ER and The West Wing were still dominant parts of the TV landscape. And those were shows that Warner Brothers Television was producing. And it was great to be a part of those. At that time, I looked at my resume and I said, calendar wise, I've had 3 jobs within a year. I need to stay here for at least 2 to 3 years to show any future potential employer that I know how to keep a job and that I can stay. So 21 years later, I am still here at Warner Brothers Television. I've had a variety of jobs throughout the career here. It is like growing up in Southern California. Actually, Daffy Duck, Batman, like those were my heroes as a kid, and kind of Warner Brothers was always the dream. And so to be able to have over 2 decades here, really, it's exceptional. It's nothing I ever expected as part of my career, but it's exactly what I wanted. And then just briefly to go into what I've been doing at Warner Brothers for the past 21 years. I started as a junior lawyer in what was basically primetime television. From legal affairs, I moved to a department called business affairs here at Warner Brothers. Back then, it was the legal affairs team. They did all the clearance work that I loved. So what you can say, what you can't say, what you can put on screen, what you can wear. They drafted all the contracts, but most of the deals were negotiated by a department called the business affairs department. They're the negotiators. They make the deals with the networks. They buy the rights. They make the deals with the talent. And I said, well, that's kind of cool. I think I'd like to go see what that is like. So I jumped over to the business affairs department after a couple of years, made great relationships with my colleagues there and throughout the company. A few years later, the opportunity came to go to a smaller unit within Warner Brothers Television called Warner Horizon Television, and I jumped over there. What they were doing was, at the time, it was more cable scripted programming. So, say, going from Big Bang Theory and Two and a Half Men to show like Pretty Little Liars, to the extent anyone was a fan of that, was a big fan of that, right? It was on a network called ABC Family that then transformed itself to Freeform, and now I don't. But it's, the television industry has gone through many changes over the course
Oh
of my
boy,
career,
no
but
kidding.
that was a good one. Warner Horizon Television also produced unscripted series like The Bachelor franchise and The Voice on NBC, and some big prime time unscripted shows. So it was a unique combination. I was excited to do it, to once again broaden what I had been doing in television. I stayed there, rose up, was the head of the business affairs department up until 2020. COVID happened. AT&T had formally purchased what was then Time Warner, and there was a new entity called Warner Media. They were looking for efficiencies. I got a call very early one morning saying, we have to do some reorganization, and we're going to put all of our scripted production back in one house, and we're going to create a new business unit for all of the unscripted production companies that we have. Um, and we would like you to become the head of operations for this new unscripted production company, reporting up to the president of Unscripted, who's a legend in the business. And I said, yeah, I'm sounds really cool, sounds really excited. I love, as part of my career, I love having a hand in everything television. I love television. I love the business of television. And even as I keep saying, the more I say television, the more it's like, it's sort of an outdated
Right,
term,
right, right.
right? But still, I can't help myself. Hey, look, I got my job because I faxed my resume, and I watch television.
Yeah,
I
that's
do watch
right.
television on a big screen. But it was the right opportunity, because it was the next sort of step in leadership and growth, and taking on bigger teams and different teams, and working more closely with other parts of the company. And so I said, yes, okay, let's do it. We're going to go on this journey together. Hopefully it lasts. That was 5 years ago. About a year ago now, a friend of mine, going all the way back to my early law firm days, and just a colleague who'd been a friend for many years, who we'd stayed in touch with, who had been general manager of Warner Brothers Animation, called me and told me he was thinking of retiring, and the time was right for him, but he really mattered to him who was going to take over kind of operations of the animation department. And he thought I would be a good fit. I'm close with the president of the unit. I'm also a fan of animation. So they said, would you be interested in this? And my first thought was, oh, I already have a job that I like. And then the next thought was, well, if I can do both, and it's an opportunity to get to know a part of the business that I've never been exposed to before, fantastic. I couldn't ask for anything more. So that has me in my current role. I sort of two titles for the two different roles of EVP operations for Warner Brothers Unscripted Television, EVP operations Warner Brothers Animation, and I get to go sort of back and forth, meld in between all over all of these parts of Warner Brothers
Well, Matt,
Television.
that's incredible. That's an incredible story.
It's a fun story. As I say it, I don't believe it. It is. I mean, if I, again, look at my resume, it's true. I'm doing all these jobs, but again, it's like this is, because this is in so many ways was the dream job. You say, how have I been so lucky to be doing it for so long? How have I been so lucky to be at this company for so long? And how have I been able to pick up different pieces along the way? Because certainly where I am right here running the operations for these two units, it's not where I started. And the industry's been through a lot in the time that I've been here. And we've had many, many different phases and modes and regimes that all have their own nuances to them, and require sort of different skills and beliefs and personalities to get through.
This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program for college students and adults on career breaks, sabbaticals, or retired, interested in learning and exploring the world together. Learn more about the Lifelong Learner program at www.semesteratSea.org. Yeah, and it seems, not only do we still use the word television, but we also, of course, use the term phone. And what is it, a phone really? Right? And of course, the consolidation in your industry, the delivery systems in your industry, the different formats, the binge watching versus release. I mean, all of it has so dramatically shifted over your career. I am curious, given what we're really focused on around As Unexpected, given all of that's changed in those 21 plus years and your trajectory up in your roles, what are some of the most unexpected things that you had to confront over that time, and how did you approach it?
It's interesting because in this particular job, for all of my colleagues at Warner Brothers Television, I think we have the benefit of being consumers of the product as well as employees and participants within the system that manufactures it, which I think in many ways makes us different from like many professions. Listening to the interview you had with the emergency room doctor, or the people who are selling carbon credits, running the Golden State Warriors. It's like
Yeah,
he loves to play basketball, but he's not on the team.
yeah,
I love sitting down and I love watching a TV show. And for me, it's hitting the button and watching it come on the big screen TV and putting my feet up. For my kids, it's sitting on their phone, sometimes next to me, sometimes in their own room. They consume content in a very different way. On the business side, however, seeing, as you note, all the different ways that the consumption of, say, content has changed, it's got major business shifts in what we do. And we get that balance over here of trying to figure out both what is right for the consumer, because how do I enjoy watching a show, versus how it can be a product of the most value. And that has changed significantly from the time when I started, like I said, when 20 million, I don't know the exact numbers, but say 20 million people were watching Friends every Thursday night. And they're outside of the Super Bowl or major events, there aren't aggregated audiences like that. So it is very unexpected to me how we are finding the funding present day to support the content that, again, the consumer really doesn't care how it's made. They just want to watch a show that they love, and we feel that desire to get it to them in the way that is most seamless. Well, also, again, this is a business, so we've had major transformation within the business over the years that we've had to lead our teams through and adapt to. But along the way, we have also had COVID, and it's one of my most heartfelt but heart-wrenching memories of time here on the job was that Friday night, whether it was March 18th or 17th, I forget what day it was, but it was a Friday night where in that week leading up to it, my two partners and I, who were running Warner Horizon, were busy in a way putting pause on hundreds of millions of dollars worth of production. I think we had 6 or 7 shows that were actually in production, and we're the smaller unit within Warner Brothers Television. And all of them, for both the health and safety of everyone involved, but also the uncertainty of what the country was going, the whole world was going through, was everything you're doing, stop, everybody go home. We don't know when we're coming back, and we will all be in touch. And putting that much of a pause on an entire business. I remember I was sitting with my closest partner at the time, and we had spent the last 2 days really in heavy, emotional, challenging, no answers, only questions, but just knowing we had to get everybody home safely. And when we did, and the sun was coming down, and the two of us were saying, we didn't know when we would see each other again. And we were great friends, great partners, and everybody else had left the building. And it was just that big hug of, love you,
yeah.
man. And we'll be zooming. I don't know, hopefully we'll see each other again soon. And then from there, it was about 6 months till the two of us then went over to the unscripted company, and knowing the next time we actually saw each other, we had different teams working with us. We were working on different shows. It was an entirely different business world that we were involved in, and learning how to take on a new team in a remote environment with different needs, both again deliveries to make sure the audience has content that they can consume however they consume it, while the staffs and crews of the productions are staying safe. And in a very short period of time, uh, the production departments across the entire industry came up with an entire game plan of how to make COVID safe production, and really detailed. Everybody has to stand so many feet away from each other, and only this many people can be in these areas. And if anybody tests positive, here you built up an entire infrastructure around it. I think fortunately we can all say that that infrastructure has entirely been unwound now, and we can look back at that era as a challenging emotional time. Thankfully, right now it's in the past, and we've made it through. We're back to work. We're back together, um, and it is, keeping the teams engaged, thriving, feeling purposeful through those moments. Are we spend a lot of time trying, focusing on it, thinking about it, talking about it, and hopefully executing on it.
And Matt, during that period when it was just so intense and new and challenging, what can you share with everyone about how you were showing up for yourself at that time? Like, this has got to be so intense. How did you take care of yourself? How did you keep showing up for relatively new team members in this new environment? How did that work for you?
The showing up for myself was, and I'll move quickly past it because as much as I've talked about myself, it is hard for me, and I don't like to do it. I'm a deflector. I will always, I will ask you, you tell me how you took care of yourself. Listen, again, I have an amazing family. We have a lot of pets. There were, when we click off the Zooms at the end of the day, I had a really wonderful support system, and that mattered tremendously. But also, as part of my leadership philosophy, a big part of it is absolutely check the ego at the door. We work in service of the product, and our jobs are to, make sure that the consumer, the audience, whoever it is, has a show they're going to watch, they're going to love, they're not going to love, however they're going to feel about it. They're going to have the choice to watch it and either be entertained or look for another show. And on the operational, business, legal, finance side, we are a service business that serves the creative needs of the shows while also balancing the fact that it is a business. And I have, the family, the kids right now, they're all obsessed with Severance, and I feel myself sometimes it's not one of our shows, but it is a great show. Digging into, I don't formally, to the extent anybody is or isn't watching Severance, there's a notion of when you go through the door at work, it's a different person, you're completely disconnected. I don't take it to that extreme, but when I do show up to work every day, and what I hope for from my teams, and I hope the way I lead is, these are moments that are certainly not about me, not about us as individuals. It is the work that we are doing. And then when the work for that day is done, and again, it could be at any point, but the work is never done. But when you've put in the hours for the day, it is able to then go be with, an amazing family that I have, and dogs and cats and everything we have going on. That's how we take care of
Yeah, that's
ourselves.
that's brilliant. I'm glad you shared that. I mean, to make shows, you show up for the people and the purpose. To make the shows, you show up for the people and the purpose. That there you go. You really encapsulated, and I think this is like that great transition point. I have a quote for you from one of my favorite books. It's quite a challenging read, but it's also highly quotable. There's so much good material in it. People have heard me talk about it before. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And so, one of my favorite quotes of the book, I'm going to read, and I'd love for you to respond to it because, as you mentioned earlier when we were talking, there's so many layers to it. But I'd like you to pick your layer. So the quote goes like this: the confidence that individuals have in their beliefs depends mostly on the quality of the story they can tell about what they see, even if they see little.
Yeah, it's that last clause. And let me just check you for a second, because I was really hoping to get like a failing to prepare is preparing to fail, like something that was like sweet spot. There are the number of commas and clauses and the story. It is so deep.
Yeah.
It is so complex what we're going to work through. So, I will touch on part of it as not being an academic. I'm sure I'm
Pick your
missing
layer. Pick your
others.
layer.
Which is, by the way, again, it's that even if they see very little, and what I will frame it in the context of both the business that I'm in and the work that I do, which is this is a storytelling medium, and the quote resonates because so much of what we bring is based on what we are telling ourselves in the moment. You say whether this is my truth on one hand, that this is how I see the business. This is either how I experience the business as a consumer. This is how I see the business with my need to have a certain margin on my P&L. That's on my production side. On the people we're negotiating with, if it's a talent agent or a talent rep, it's these are the needs that I have for my client, and here's my perspective of the business. And it's really whether people see a little or the whole picture. It's understanding that people we're dealing with are all coming from their own, it's framed within their narrative to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And I think having that understanding is really important in working through. A large part of this job is negotiating and working through the negotiations to try to bring people together to either I need to get a deal done with a third party, or we need the team to rally around a certain ideal and execute on a certain business premise. And knowing where everybody's coming from, what is their scope, wide or narrow,
Yeah.
um, and then moving forward, say with confidence. Sometimes too much confidence can be a difficult thing to work with, and that's where you have to find out: is this a confidence based on a narrow frame, and we got to pull that
Exactly.
open,
Exactly.
bust
Yeah.
on through.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's actually that is such a perfect answer. I mean, there is a lot within the quote, and what I'm interpreting from what you're saying is, in order for the quality of the story and the outcome of that story to improve, we have to see more than a little, and that includes seeing what our partners are saying, seeing what our people are saying, seeing what the audience is saying. So you're trying to ensure you see a lot, not a little. Because the more you see, the more you understand, the better the quality story is you will have to tell to your audiences, to your staff, to your team members, and to those to whom you report.
Thank you for reframing it in that way, because that was absolutely the much better way of what I was trying to say in far too many words.
No, I'm just interpreting your words the best I can. I'm trying to prove the quality of our joint story together right here.
I love that.
Hey, Matt, this has been awesome. I would love it if you had one last piece of advice for anybody who's thinking of entertainment or whatever industry you would, or just early in their career.
So this is where it's a confidence coming from, whether my narrow perspective. I'll only talk about like sort of how it worked for me is really one of the only things that's my reference
Of
point. And
course, of course.
very one of the things that sort of got me on the way very early in my career. I would write occasional legal, back as a lawyer, I'd write occasional legal articles and try and get them published, and go that extra step. And on that resume that I faxed in, when I had some published articles on there, it's the thing that spoke to the employer. This isn't someone who just has a job. This is someone who goes outside of what their job is to show, number one, it showed a love for the industry, but also going that next step. So if I'm giving any advice, and everyone, take deep breaths and do what feels right to you, but it is going outside of the four walls of what your profession is, or picking something up to show how much you care about the industry you want to be in, even if you're not being paid for it in that moment, even if no one is asking you to do it. That's the way to stand out and have people really see how much you care. Because that's, as say, a manager and a leader, I want people here who care about what we're doing.
That is a perfect answer. Don't just say you want to do it. Show
Show it.
evidence.
Show it.
Yeah, show it. Perfect ending. Hey, Matt, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for the time. Have a great weekend.
Love it, Scott. Thanks so much. Good to chat.
Yeah. This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program where students visit 10 countries on 3 continents, all while taking 3 to 4 college classes through Colorado State University. See course offerings and upcoming voyage itineraries at www.semesteratsea.org. Thank you for joining this week's episode of the As Unexpected podcast. The viewpoints and opinions of featured guests do not necessarily represent those of the Institute for Shipboard Education or Semester at Sea. Hit the like button, share it with your colleagues, family, and friends, and remember, be curious, be compassionate, be courageous. That's what it takes to lead as unexpected.